Good evening. Today's session is the first part of our last chapter, semiconductor devices. And in this session, we discuss about the energy bands and how to distinguish between metals, insulators, and semiconductors based on this energy band. So this is part one of last chapter, semiconductors. Now, I'm sure you've learned in chemistry, and also I will be teaching you a chapter called atoms, which comes before this semiconductor. When we learn that chapter on atoms, you will be learning more about the atomic structure and the energy levels associated with the different orbits of an atom. But I think you must have learned it in chemistry also. But anyway, suppose you take an isolated atom, a single atom. We know that the center will have the nucleus, the positively charged nucleus with the protons and the neutrons, and the electrons are in shells around this nucleus. And this outermost shell is what you call as the valence shell. Now, for example, suppose you take silicon. We are interested in the group 4 elements today, and I'm talking about silicon. Silicon, which has the third orbit as the valence shell, has 4 electrons in its valence shell. So the other electrons are all occupying the innermost shells. This is the valence shell I'm talking about. 4 electrons in the valence shell. And you will see, when I teach you the atomic structure, you will see that every shell has an associated energy level. That means, if suppose, let's say E is the energy of the valence shell, it means that all the 4 electrons occupying the valence shell, that is the valence electrons, all of them must have the same energy. So if I were to draw a graph where I'm going to plot the energy levels, all these 4 electrons must have the same energy, which is the energy of the valence shell here. And that happens in an isolated atom. That means a single atom. So if you now take a crystal of this silicon, that is, if you take a crystal, then what happens here is, let's say this crystal has n atoms. Okay. So then what you're doing is, in that crystal you are putting together lot of these atoms, n atoms, packed together like this. Here, lot of atoms which are brought together to form this crystal. Now, in such a case, what happens is, so all of these atoms have a central nucleus with a positive charge, and they all have 4 valence electrons. So we have 4 valence electrons, each of them. And all these 4 electrons, valence electrons, if it had been silicon as an isolated atom, all these 4 electrons would have had the same energy E. But when you're bringing them together like this, very close to each other, then what happens is, each of these electrons now will start interacting with the nucleus of the neighboring atom and the neighboring electrons of the neighboring atom. So this one electron here can interact with this nucleus, with this nucleus, with this nucleus, and this nucleus. Also, it can interact with the other electrons that are close by. So what happens is, there will be a slight change in its energy. Instead of having this one single energy, the energy of this one electron out of the 4 valence electrons can slightly increase, or it can decrease from the original energy, original value. Now, if you look at the 4 valence electrons of this atom, you can see that the number of interactions will depend on the number of neighboring atoms that that particular atom has. For example, if you look at an atom here, the number of interactions that this electron will have will be different from the number of interactions that this electron will have. Because you see, there is only one atom here, and therefore the number of interactions it will undergo is lesser, but this will undergo interaction with lot of other nuclei and electrons. So each of these valence electrons are undergoing different interactions depending on the neighboring atoms, and therefore each of these 4 electrons will acquire different energy levels. So now you have n atoms and n 4 in each 4 valence shell, 4 valence electrons for each atom. So you have so many different 4n energy levels, and that range of energies possessed by this valence electrons, when they are brought together in a crystal, that is what you call as the valence band. So I hope you've understood that had the silicon been an isolated atom, all the 4 electrons would have had a single energy level. All of them have the same energy. But when you bring them together in a crystal like this, each of these 4 electrons are interacting with their neighboring atoms. That electron will interact with other nuclei and other electrons, and there will be a slight change in its energy. Like that, each atom has 4 valence electrons. If there are n atoms, there will be 4n valence electrons, each of them having a different energy level, and that range of energies possessed by these valence electrons in this crystal is what you call as the valence band. Now the uppermost level of this valence band we denote as EV. Now you know that in a good conductor, or if it should conduct electricity, conduction is possible, then the material must have free electrons. So if these electrons, these bound electrons, are given some thermal energy, they are capable of breaking free from the nucleus, becoming free electrons which can conduct electricity. Now, so that means these free electrons possess some greater energy than the bound electrons. So let's say there are lots of free electrons available for conduction. So their energy range is what I am going to show here. The free electrons possess higher energy than the electrons which are bound, and the range of energies that is possessed by these free electrons which are available for conduction is what you call as the conduction band. So if it's a bound electron like I've shown you, if they're all bound in the valence shell, then their energy range will be between this and this. But if it's got enough energy and it is free now, not bound to the nucleus but free to conduct electricity, then it should have an energy in the range from here to here, and the lowest energy level of the conduction band is what you call as EC. Now you will see that there is a difference between the lowermost level of the conduction band and the uppermost energy level of the valence band, and that difference in the energy is what you call as EG, referred to as the forbidden energy gap, sometimes simply referred to as energy gap, or sometimes referred to as band gap. They all mean the same thing. So this energy gap will determine whether material is a good conductor or an insulator or a semiconductor. Now if you have the two bands, that is the conduction band and the valence band, overlapping each other such that there is no energy gap, then it is a very good conductor. No, it's a very good conductor like this. If you're drawing the band gap here, where you're plotting the energy here, and you have this as the valence band, and overlapping that we have the conduction band like this. So there's an overlapping between the conduction band and the valence band. Such then there is no energy gap. That means these electrons in the valence band can easily move into the conduction band, thereby becoming free electrons available for conduction, and that is why it is a good conductor. And you will see in the group 4 elements, I have jotted down tin. There are lots of other metals. Okay, I've just taken one example which is given in the textbook. Tin is having an energy gap of 0 electron volt. So therefore it is a good, it's a metal being a good conductor whose resistivity range is given to you. That is 10 raised to minus 2 to 10 raised to minus 8 ohm meter. Very low resistivity. Reciprocal of resistivity is conductivity. That's 10 raised to 2 to 10 raised to 8 Siemens per meter. And so you see it's a good conductor with a high conductivity because its energy gap is 0. Now we look at the next type of material. We look at the insulator. Insulators, as you know, have no free electrons for conduction and therefore they are bad conductors. So if you now draw the energy level here, then we have this is the valence band we are talking about, and the uppermost level is what we call as EV. We also have the conduction band which is above that, higher energy levels. This is EC, and this is the conduction band. Okay. Now we have the bound electrons are all here. Those electrons which are in the valence shell are bound to the nucleus and they are appearing in the valence band. So the valence band is completely full because all the electrons are bound. There are no free electrons. Now if the energy gap is greater than 3 electron volt, then what happens is this energy gap is too high. You cannot give thermal energy to these electrons and excite them into the conduction band so that they are free to conduct electricity. That's not possible, and therefore they are insulators, bad conductors, because the energy gap is too large. You are unable to excite these electrons, these bound electrons which are in the valence shell bound to the nucleus. You cannot give them enough thermal energy so that they get excited and jump into the conduction band. So no free electrons available, and such materials are called insulators whose resistivity is very high, 10 raised to 11 to 10 raised to 19 ohm meter, but its conductivity is very low, 10 raised to minus 11 to 10 raised to minus 19 Siemens per meter. Then in that group 4 elements, you look at carbon. Carbon exists as graphite and diamond. Graphite is a good conductor, but diamond is an insulator. Its energy gap is 5.4 electron volt, so it's greater than 3 electron volt. So carbon becomes an insulator because the energy gap is too large. Then we go on to look at a class of materials which come in between the two, that is the semiconductor. In a semiconductor, if you plot the energy levels here, you will see at T equal to 0 Kelvin, we have the valence band, the lower valence band. Okay, this is a valence band. The the valence band is completely full. All the electrons are bound in the valence shell, so they all appear in the valence band. The conduction band is completely empty, no free electrons available for conduction at T equal to 0 Kelvin. So this is the conduction band. Okay, this is EC and this is EB. But then the energy gap is less than 3 electron volt, which means if you simply increase the thermal energy, if you supply thermal energy, you can easily excite these electrons from the valence band into the conduction band, so that then you will have free electrons and they become good conductors. So unlike insulators have a large energy gap, so you cannot excite these electrons into the conduction band. But in a semiconductor, because the energy gap is less than 3 electron volt, for example, you look at silicon and germanium, energy gap is 1.1, and for germanium it is 0.7 electron volt, less than 3 electron volt. So it is small enough that if you increase the temperature, if you give thermal energy, you can excite these electrons into the conduction band, thereby they become free electrons and they are available for conduction. So then they become good conductors. But at T equal to 0 Kelvin, they are good insulators. Okay. So these are the two materials we are. So look at their resistivity and conductivity. So this is our discussion. This kind of material called as semiconductors is what we are going to discuss in this whole chapter. And most of my explanation I will be basing on this silicon. The same thing will happen for germanium. Group 4 elements have, all of them have 4 valence electrons. So whether you discuss using silicon or germanium, it's going to be the same, because we are only interested in the 4 valence electrons. So either silicon or germanium you may use. So let us look at the silicon. See, we have, let's say, one silicon here with a central nucleus, of course, but I'm only representing the valence shell. I'm not drawing the other shells. Now we have 4 valence electrons. Every silicon has 4 valence electrons. Okay. Now you know in chemistry that it will always try to complete its octet, that is, have 8 electrons in the valence shell. So what happens is, this silicon will now bond with another silicon also with 4 valence electrons. Here also, so they will share here. Similarly, another neighboring share the electron. Here, this is silicon here. This electron will be shared in a covalent bonding with another neighboring silicon, and this will also enter into bonding with a neighboring silicon which has its 4 valence electrons. Now here there are lots of other silicon. I am just showing one which is sharing its entering into covalent bond, so that now this silicon has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and has completed its octet. This silicon will bond with other silicon and so on. Such a pure semiconductor which has only silicon atoms in it going into covalent bonding is what you call as an intrinsic semiconductor. So in an intrinsic semiconductor, we only have pure germanium. All of them will be germanium atoms, or you can also talk about it as silicon. There will be lots of others. I have not drawn all of them, and they are all in covalent bonding. So you will see, if I draw the energy band diagram, this is energy here, energy band diagram, at T equal to 0 Kelvin, you will see that you have the valence band here, right? This is the valence band, okay? At the valence band, here the valence band, you will see that all of the 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and many other, which I told you, I have not drawn all the others. So all of them are all bonded now, and because they are in the valence shell and bonded, they will all be in this valence band. How many ever you want, you can draw, okay? Depending on how many have entered into bonding. The valence band is full, but the conduction band is empty. There are no electrons available in the conduction band and it is empty because you see there are no free electrons at T equal to 0 Kelvin. Now suppose you increase the temperature to T greater than 0 Kelvin. So we have now supplied some temperature which is greater than 0 Kelvin, and some of these bonded electrons get enough energy to break free. So let's imagine that this electron, let me draw these electrons here so that I can these electrons, bound electrons. Okay. Now suppose this electron gets enough energy and it becomes free electron. Okay, one free electron. Let's say this also breaks free to get another free electron. There's a free electron available. So now you see there are 2 free electrons available for conduction. So naturally from here 2 of these electrons have got enough energy to jump into or excite themselves into the conduction band. So these 2 electrons have become free, and those 2 electrons from here will be removed and they will appear in the conduction band. But here we have a vacancy of an electron. An electron has left the space. So it's called the vacancy of an electron. Here also we have a vacancy of an electron, and those 2 vacancies will appear in the valence band. And these vacancies are what you call as holes. Holes are just vacancies of electrons. Electrons have become free, leaving a vacancy there, and that vacancy is what you call as a hole. And the hole naturally should appear in the valence band. So now you will see, if we have 2 free electrons, we have 2 holes. If 3 free electrons become free, then we have 3 holes. If 4 electrons are free, then we have 4 holes. That means you have 4 holes would mean you have 4 electrons in the conduction band. So in an intrinsic semiconductor, always the number of electrons is equal to the number of holes. They'll always be equal, number of electrons equal to the number of holes. So this is the band diagram at T greater than 0 Kelvin, but at T equal to 0 Kelvin, this valence band is completely full, but the conduction band is completely empty. There are no free electrons and it behaves like an insulator. Now we will go on to discuss the extrinsic semiconductor now. Now, in an extrinsic semiconductor, we have this process called as doping. This process is called doping. The process of doping is simply adding an impurity atom called the dopant. The impurity atom that you add is called the dopant, and by adding this dopant, we can increase the conductivity of a semiconductor. So, here what we do is, we had the silicon. Earlier on, I showed you this as the silicon. These were all silicon, pure silicon in an intrinsic semiconductor. Okay. In an intrinsic semiconductor, and they had all got into bonding like this. So, and they were sharing electrons, covalent bonding. Okay. Now, suppose we decide to dope it with a pentavalent impurity. A pentavalent impurity like arsenic or antimony or even phosphorus are all pentavalent impurity. Pentavalent impurity would mean it is a having 5 valence electrons, unlike the silicon. So now that dopant I am going to use is, let's say, antimony. So if I am now going to let arsenic or antimony here, then what happens is it has 5 valence electrons, right? So of the 5 valence electrons, 4 of them will enter into bonding, but it has 5 valence electrons. So one valence electron unable to enter into bonding will appear here as a free electron already. Even at T equal to 0 Kelvin, we already have a free electron because this antimony here is a pentavalent impurity. Being a pentavalent impurity, only 4 of its electrons can enter into bonding. The remaining 5th electron, unable to enter into bonding, is already available for conduction. So, which means if you have added, let's say 3 antimony. So, at T equal to 0 Kelvin, here if I am plotting energy, we have the valence band here. This is EV, this is the valence band. We have the conduction band here, that is conduction band. This is EC, okay, and this is the energy gap. Now at T equal to 0 Kelvin, all the bonded electrons that we have drawn here will all be bonded here. It's all in the valence band. They are all bound and they are not free to conduct. But because of this antimony, we have one extra electron, and that extra electron, being a free electron, will appear in the conduction band. So at T equal to 0 Kelvin itself, we have an electron in the conduction band because of the impurity atom, which is called the donor atom. Donor atom, because it is able to donate a free electron, it is called the donor atom, and that will appear in the conduction band already. So if you have, let's say, added 3 dopants, there is one antimony here, one more and one more, like that 3 dopants. Each dopant, each antimony will provide one free electron. So let's say we have already got 3 free electrons because of the impurity atom at T equal to 0 Kelvin. Now let's say you increase the temperature to T greater than 0 Kelvin. You're going to increase the temperature. When you increase the temperature, let us say 1, 2 of them got enough energy to break free. So we got 2 free electrons and created 2 holes, vacancies of electrons. These 2 free electrons will appear in the conduction band, but the holes which are in the bonding, that vacancy will appear here, right? these two electrons have moved up into the conduction band above the energy gap, and these two holes will now appear in the valence band. So now you will see the number of electrons 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is more than number of electrons greater than the number of holes, out of which 3 have been provided by the impurity atom, the antimony that you added, and the two electrons have come because of thermal excitation. That means you gave higher temperature and these two electrons got enough energy to excite themselves into the conduction band and become free, and these two electrons have appeared because of thermal excitation and therefore leaving two holes in the valence band. So unlike an intrinsic semiconductor where number of electrons was equal to number of holes, you will see in an extrinsic semiconductor you have, in this case we have number of electrons greater than the number of holes, and therefore it is called the N-type semiconductor. N-type semiconductor, because number of electrons greater than number of holes. Okay, now also this number of electrons, these electrons are therefore called the majority carriers and the holes are called the minority carriers. Now because these three electrons actually, this level will be called the acceptor level, donor level, donor level. Wait. We have this as EC and this as ED. Okay. Now, why we call it as a donor level and why it will reduce the energy gap is because these electrons came from the antimony, 3 of them. I told you in our example we had added 3 impurity atoms. So this energy level that we had drawn, this conduction band, was silicon. Now when you add an impurity, which we added as antimony, the electron that was provided by this antimony need not have the same range, right? So the range of energy possessed by the donor atom is what we have put with this dotted line, which we call as ED, and you will see that therefore this energy gap has been reduced, and initially it was this. Now when you dope it with antimony, the energy gap has become this, and this has reduced, and therefore now it's easier for these electrons to excite themselves into the conduction band. So definitely an extrinsic N-type semiconductor is better than an intrinsic semiconductor, because in intrinsic semiconductor the energy gap was larger and the number of electrons was equal to the number of holes. Here we have got more number of charge carriers because we have 5 electrons here plus the 2 holes also become charge carriers. I will be explaining that to you. Charge carriers, and therefore we have this as the majority carrier and holes as the minority carrier in an N-type semiconductor. So that is extrinsic semiconductor, doping it with a pentavalent impurity. Now you could also dope it with a trivalent impurity like boron, aluminum or indium. All these are dopants which you can dope as a trivalent impurity. So if it's a trivalent impurity, we have our original diagram, all the silicon sharing, and there are electrons in covalent bonding like this. Okay, so they all had electrons. Now suppose you dope it with a trivalent impurity like boron. Boron trivalent would mean it has only 3 valence electrons. So instead of having 1, 2, 3, 4, it will already have a vacancy because boron is trivalent. So this electron is contributed by silicon here, this silicon has contributed this silicon has contributed this silicon has contributed this. This electron and this electron is boron, is trivalent and has only 3 valence electrons. So already there is a vacancy of an electron, and that vacancy will appear in the valence band because these are all bonded. Okay, so this hole will appear in the valence band. So now if I draw the energy levels at T equal to 0 Kelvin, This is the valence band. This is EV, which is the valence band, uppermost level of the valence band. We have the conduction band above it, where this is EC. Okay, and we have the energy gap here. Now all these bonded electrons should appear here in the valence band, like this. Now this hole can only appear in the valence band because this is the absence of an electron in the valence shell, and therefore we already have a hole in the valence band. Now suppose you had added, let's say, 3 boron impurities. Each boron contributes 1 hole. So if you add, so at T equal to 0 Kelvin itself, we will have 3 holes if you add 3 boron, because each boron is contributing 1 hole. So there are no electrons, free electrons, but you still have 3 holes in the valence shell, valence band, simply because you added a trivalent impurity. Now, so this is a picture at T equal to 0 Kelvin. Suppose I increase it above 0 Kelvin, that is, I am supplying thermal energy. Let us imagine 2 of them got enough energy to break free from bonding and become free electrons. Okay, this creates a vacancy in the valence band or in the bonding, and that vacancy will appear as a hole in the valence shell because this is valence band. So we have an additional 2 bonds here, 2 vacancies here, but these 2 free electrons should appear in the conduction band. Okay, so now you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, out of which 3 of them were provided by the boron, which is the impurity atom, and the other 2 came because of thermal excitation, the electrons becoming free. So now we have number of holes greater than number of electrons, and since these vacancies will now behave like a positive charge, simply because these vacancies can actually attract an electron into it. So because it can attract an electron, it behaves like a positive charge, and therefore we call this as a p-type semiconductor. P-type semiconductor, because the number of holes is greater than the number of electrons, and the holes is here called the majority carrier and electron is called the minority carrier. So this is a picture at T greater than 0 Kelvin, having majority carriers here and minority carriers, which are the electrons. Now these acts, so now what happens here is these holes can accept electrons. I told you, because they have vacancies of electrons, they can accept an electron, and this electron that is accepted here will be belonging to the boron. So what happens is the electrons that enter into bonding here will have a higher energy level here, which is called EA. So we have, when electrons enter into these holes, the energy level possessed by these electrons need not lie in this range, because what is this range here we gave? This range was given for silicon. When we talk about boron, the electron that enters into bonding here can have a higher energy level. Here, the bottom level of the valence band can be higher, and that is called the acceptor energy level, because these atoms are called acceptor atoms because they can accept an electrons. They are called acceptor atoms, and you see here also there is a reduction in the energy gap. So p-type semiconductor, to be remembered, is you dope it with a trivalent impurity. One more property of how you select a dopant is the size of this dopant that you're adding. Like I said, you can add boron or indium or aluminium when you're trying to dope with when you're doing trivalent doping for producing p-type semiconductor. The size of the dopant and the size of the other atoms must relatively be the same, almost the same, not too, they should not be too different. So if almost we select atoms which have the same size as the silicon. Similarly, when you do pentavalent doping, you select arsenic, antimony or phosphorus, I said, because they have almost similar sizes as the neighboring silicon atoms. So that is one condition for dopant atoms. So this is what we need for today's class, and based on this, next class we'll talk about the p-n junction, how holes and electrons both become charge carriers in a semiconductor. Thank you.